Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here with Brent Hill, who's the new CEO of Tourism Fiji, brand new. And we're going to talk to Brent. I've been to Fiji a couple of times, love it. It's a great destination. And right now, you can't go there except unless you quarantine, but we're hoping it's going to open up soon. And we're going to talk to Brent about that and also what's going on with Fiji and its tourism promotion. And you're going to find out about all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Brent, first of all, congratulations. And how are you and where are you?
Yeah, hello, James. So right now I'm in Nandi, so I'm overlooking the beautiful Nandi Bay in the Sofitel, and I'm doing very well. I think if you wanted to experience quarantine anywhere in the world, I would recommend doing it in Fiji. It's they're looking after us beautifully well. I can't complain.
I volunteer. You can quarantine me anytime in Fiji. I'm on the next plane. How about that? So that looks good. Now, with that in mind, when are you kind of hoping, projecting that Fiji will finally reopen, especially to travelers from the United States?
Yeah, so we're looking at before the end of the year in December, opening to America. That's the plan at this stage. And really what's giving us the positivity about that is our local vaccination rate is tracking really, really well. So at current, we're at 92% of our target population.
That's amazing.
And about 40% fully vaccinated. So, yeah, we're doing really, really well. The Fijian population are very much, rocking up and playing their part. And so from that perspective, we feel really positive about opening to vaccinated travellers.
No, that's great. And that's a big step. And I know you're eager to get people back, especially from one of your main markets like the U.S. And, of course, we'll talk about Australia. What do you think, if any sense yet, or maybe it's too early to know, what the protocol for U.S. visitors will be to enter Fiji? What kind of things they'll have to have? Will they have to show a vaccination card? Obviously, maybe they have to do a COVID test. What do you think is going to be the standards?
Yeah, so obviously this is not yet government policy, but in a nutshell, what we're looking at is a proof of vaccination to board the plane and test negative before you come over. So, for example, for me coming from Australia, I did a PCR test within 72 hours.
Right.
That's pretty easy to do. You arrive at the airport, you present that to the border control, and you get on the plane. Then when you get into Nandi, you probably just do a rapid test there. The world's moved very quickly with the rapid tests. You can sort of get those done in sort of 5 to 10 minutes. And then really from there, the process will be that we'll be advising tourists to travel with certified operators. So things like, transport, resorts, experiences, if you go on a snorkeling tour or a dive tour or play golf or whatever, that'll all be certified. And the certification means, it's 100% vaccinated.
Right.
And following the Care Fiji commitment. So from that perspective, it's not just a complete free-for-all. There's certainly no quarantine, but what we do want to do is just make sure that everybody is safe, both our local population and the tourist who comes in, because from my perspective, I would love, 100% of the people who come in to leave testing negative also and head back and have had amazing experience.
No, absolutely. That's the goal for all of us. And there have been some cases where people got their antigen on return because obviously to come back to the States, they need an antigen test, and that's when you find out they test positive. But testing positive doesn't necessarily mean you actually have symptoms of the disease. So that's always, I was actually on a ship, and actually the recent Virtuoso conference in Las Vegas where 2 people tested positive because they were leaving, and everybody seemed to be fine beyond that. It wasn't a spreader event, so-called. Now let's talk a little bit about now your 2 biggest tourism markets are really Australia and the U.S. and you're hoping the U.S. will be back, December. What about Australia? Because you're Australian, I know that, and it seems like you guys just don't want anybody to come anywhere near you all for a while. It's going to be interesting because I love Australia and I really want to get back, but boy, we're thinking maybe next year.
Yeah, look, I think, to be honest, James, I think Australia is probably, changing its policy now. I think,
Right.
For a long time there, it was all about eradication and zero COVID, and look, to be honest, living in Australia over the last year, we certainly, from where I came from in South Australia, in Adelaide, we had a lot of freedom, so we were able to do a lot of things. So from that perspective, it worked really well.
Right.
Unfortunately, the vaccination numbers were lagging where they would like them to be. And I think now, with the cases that we're seeing in Sydney and now also in Auckland in New Zealand, I think that the Australian and New Zealand governments are realising that, a bubble that relies on zero COVID is unsustainable.
Right.
So what we're starting to see now is, rapid acceleration of vaccination. Right. And an understanding that we're already seeing the New South Wales government say that if people get vaccinated, they can start having more freedom. And that's a step in the right direction, I think, in terms of where travel needs to go.
Right.
And what that will be is essentially, if you're a double vaccinated traveller, you test negative, that you then be able to have a whole lot more freedoms become available to you.
And then obviously, then you can head to Fiji, where I know a lot of Australians like to go, having seen a lot of them there when I was there. So clearly, it's time. I'm sure it's been tough to be just kind of quarantined in Australia effectively for the last year or so. It's been horrible. Let's talk a little bit about you, because you're brand new to the role. Let's talk about your background. Sure. What is your background? I understand you've also had to deal with a few crises before, including like Australian brush fires and all kinds of things in your previous role. But talk a little bit about what your experience has been.
Yeah, so like I've always been a marketer, and so I worked across a whole range of different industries. And about 6 or so years ago, I moved across into tourism, and tourism is such an amazing industry to be a part of. From a marketing perspective. So, the great thing was I was at South Australian Tourism Commission, and we were, really on the increase in terms of that tourism boom that was across the world. And then, of course, we had the bushfires, which was quite devastating, and then followed immediately by COVID-19. So, the last 2 years were very difficult. But I think out of that, you learn a lot of lessons in terms of things like communication and how to work with industry, and just being human, being really honest and upfront about, where you're at. And I think that these days, I think people are quite forgiving if you're having a real go, and they understand you're not necessarily always going to get it right.
Right.
But I think that's the thing with COVID. We're now understanding that, hey, if we are trying to push forward, it won't necessarily be absolutely perfect, but it's going to take us forward.
No, so hopefully but you've had a little bit of crisis communication and crisis marketing in your past, so that this is probably going to be at least something you can address, having had that experience. And yes, COVID's like nothing else, but as you correctly said, I think the idea of a zero COVID policy is probably unrealistic at this stage, and people are just going to have to learn to live with it. And that's how we're going to get back, I think. And certainly, I know Australia's done a great job, and obviously Fiji's done a great job. But I think it's time we start looking at what travelers want to do and get them back going. Let's talk about what Tourism Fiji is going to do to win back tourists. Do you have any new campaigns planned, or you got anything coming up both for consumers and also for trade?
Yeah, so like, right now in America, we've got a smaller campaign called Find Your Bula, which is a great little piece that, is available on, social and digital networks that just sort of starts to get people excited about, what they might want to do in Fiji, and I guess the breadth and depth of what you can do in Fiji as well. But we're really excited that we are progressing really quickly on a large global campaign. So we're going to shoot that here in Fiji next month. Okay. That's being worked through at the moment, where we're talking to a number of different people to help us make that. Mm-hmm. And I think, from my perspective, I want to make sure that people feel welcomed to Fiji in that beautiful Fijian way. I mean, the Fijian people are a huge part of when you travel to Fiji. They're the happiest on earth. And so we want to make sure that what we do is a a true, Fijian reflection of what your holiday will be. So we're looking forward to launching that. You'll see that in America probably around November.
Yeah, that's great. Anything special planned for the trade, for travel advisors here in terms of getting them back going to sell Fiji?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the really exciting things is that we're working with Fiji Airways, and some of the price points that I've seen that are being offered, you wouldn't have seen for Fiji for some time. And I think, from our perspective, from Tourism Fiji's perspective, we're really excited about that. We think that, Fiji is a really premium destination, of course, but the great thing is, we want to reward the people that are brave enough to sort of go, okay, yep, cool, I'm going to get on that plane, I'm going to get over there, and come on those first planes in December. So you're going to see some pretty aggressive price points at places like the Marriott, the Intercontinental, the Hilton, some of these kind of places, where you'll be able to get a fully inclusive stay, including the flight, for not much more than $1,200 US per person. So it's really aggressive pricing, and I think people should be looking out for that. Okay. And it's designed to basically say, hey, it just takes all of that nervousness out of the equation, because people are going to go, I've got to get a part of that. This is a beautiful part of the world. The price point's really attractive, and they know that if they come here, they're really helping us out.
No, absolutely. And I think that'll be definitely a way to get them back going and getting travel advisors to start booking their clients. It's worked in Europe. It's funny because here in the States, domestic tourism was all the rage last year because it was what you could book. Right. And that has continued. But all of a sudden, Europe opened and it looked very attractive because of what the pricing was, because everybody was going to domestic destinations and driving up the prices of a lot of resorts and everything else. And all of a sudden, you could do pretty good if you went to Europe, and that's been certainly a trend in the luxury sphere, where a lot of clients suddenly just said, "Hey, I might as well go to Europe. It's empty, and I might as well we'll see it." So they're kind of throwing caution to the winds, if you will. Not really, but they're willing to take the risk, and they're going. So hopefully, you're going to have the same deal if you have some very attractive offers out there for Fiji.
I think you're right. I think it's a case where Fiji has some incredible luxury product that, people want to come and stay at, the Namale or the Six Senses, etc., those private islands, they're there, and that's not a price point driven experience, and people are going to want to be able to get to those places. But I think what's really exciting is that perhaps for people who haven't been to Fiji, or maybe only been, one time before, or potentially considering, some sort of, island tropical getaway, that what we'll be putting in place is some pretty attractive offers and really convenient flights. I think that's the really exciting thing as well, is certainly if you're on the West Coast, potentially into Texas, the opportunity to fly to Fiji will be super convenient, and that's really exciting as well, being able to get there and back very easily directly.
Well, that is key, and it's better to have that direct flight to Fiji, as I've learned a few times. The last time I was there, I actually was in Australia and flew up to Fiji to Australia and then came back direct. So that was a great way to go. Now, during the pandemic, obviously for last year, what has Fiji been working on? Improvements to the tourism infrastructure, new and renovated resorts, revamped airports. What have you been up to?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really exciting, actually, is, from my perspective, you naturally sort of think, well, what is it going to be like? Some of the resorts that have been just left for a while, but I've been really impressed with, what's actually been done. For example, just down the road from me here, the Sheraton's just undergone a $70 million upgrade.
Okay.
They're due to open that in the next few weeks. We've seen, some of the places out on the islands that have, upgraded their bars. I know there's a couple of island properties that have, been exploring the reefs. So they've got whole new dive sites. They've got whole new snorkeling sites, which is incredibly exciting. So, parts of Fiji like Banu Lebu and around Sabu Sabu, where a lot of US customers like to go, some of the improvements that are up there are really exciting. So I think that's been the really positive side of COVID is that no one's sort of been sitting back on their hands and doing nothing. There's actually been a lot of work that's been going on. So even here where I am in Denarau, there's actually a fair bit of activity happening already, just putting the finishing touches and getting things ready.
No, that's great. Now, I assume, having taken this job, that before all this happened, you've been to Fiji a few times?
Right. Yeah, I have.
Okay, good. Otherwise, I don't think you would go on a destination blind, put it that way.
No, but of course, with COVID, I hadn't been to Fiji for a few years. So
right.
I was looking forward to getting back here. And, it's one of those things, James, I'm sure you would appreciate, as soon as you fly into a destination that you've been to before, there's those really familiar sights and sounds and smells and things like that come back. And, straight away, the frangipani smell and the warm air, it's pretty nice to be back.
No, absolutely. And it is all the islands are wonderful, and I've managed to go to both a little bit, but there's so much more to explore. Now, in terms of what you would tell U.S. travel advisors about selling Fiji right now, even before it reopens, how should they approach it? How can you get the trade working to get them selling Fiji now?
Yeah, exactly. So Ruth Daly is our amazing country manager. She's based in LA with Hannah Townsend, who's our PR manager. And we've started to do some things like we had virtual FTE not long ago. We had about 30 operators there. We're communicating a lot more regularly now. So obviously our website is fiji.travel. We also are pretty prevalent on social media, LinkedIn, etc., getting those stories out, and that's really going to ramp up as we go. So the key thing I would say is if people want to get in touch with us, look up Ruth Daly and talk to her, because some of these packages that are being sort of put together are quite exciting for the consumer. Right. And really, from our perspective, we initially, with the kind of capacity that Fiji Airways is looking at putting into America, there's going to be opportunities for everybody. So whether you're a retail agent or a wholesaler or inbounder, there's going to be opportunities for everyone, OTAs as well. So we want to work with as many as possible. We want to get it out to as many people as possible. So we're going to be communicating to the industry a lot. And I would say as well, sign up for our EDMs. They're a really regular source of information about things like those processes I talked about, the protocols on the ground. Sure. We'll be updating the industry. And we're looking at doing webinars with the industry as well, probably every fortnight at this stage. So last Friday we did one. We had about 260 people logging in to get the information. So we'll continue to do that as we go.
Well, I know you also have a very robust travel agent education program too, to get them up to speed. And then, so I know a number of travel advisors have taken advantage of that. So yeah. Anything else you want to say to the 90,000 travel advisors we go out to here in the U.S.?
Yeah, look, probably the final message is just to say, look, one thing to not forget in this whole thing is that Fiji is as beautiful as ever. Fijian people are here waiting to welcome Americans back. The resorts are looking amazing. The sand's just as white, the water's just as blue. The coconut palms are still here. I can see them. And I think that's the really exciting thing, is that I know everyone's really focused on the safety, and as we should be. But one thing I can assure you is, when you get off that plane, you're instantly going to relax and enjoy it. So from that perspective, we're looking forward to holding a physical FTE, a Fiji Tourism Exchange, again in 2022. So more information will come out about that soon. But I would say, the connectivity, the capacity that's coming into Fiji, get on board that and send your travelers out here, because we definitely want to welcome them with open arms. Absolutely.
Well, Brent, first of all, congratulations on your new role. I hope to see you soon, either at a Fiji Tourism Exchange next year, or as I told you, I'm volunteer. I'll quarantine for 2 weeks. It's fine. Just fly me out, and we'll hang out at the resorts for a while. Okay, have a few beers and see what happens. Right. I'm all for that. I can work anywhere, so it's okay.
Right.
Anyway, again, thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and thank you for your time today.
Tanaka.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.